Hello, Dr. Melba. Today is August 12th, 2020. My name is Dr. Noreen Rivera, and I am interviewing Dr. Melba Salazar-Lucio for the University Library Special Collections and Archives at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, hereafter abbreviated as UTRGV. And this project is in partnership with Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. So please know, Dr. Melba, that this interview will be placed in the University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV and shared with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. So if there's anything that you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there is something that you do want to talk about or add to this interview, please bring it up at any time and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record you consenting to make sure you agree with our interview procedures before we continue. So,
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each question. So let me move into this part of the preamble. The University Library Special Collections and Archives wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and other documentation that you are willing to share with us at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley Library and Special Collections and Archives. UTRGV University Library will retain copyright of the interview and any materials you may choose to donate to Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV. Question 1. Do you give University Library Special Collections and Archives at UTRGV consent to archive your interview and any materials you wish to donate at UTRGV University Library?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Second question. Do you grant UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you may provide?
Yes, I agree.
Do you allow UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Question 4 of 6. Do you grant the University Library Special Collections and Archives consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at UT Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History project, which will include posting the interview on the internet?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you. While we have many questions in the pre-interview form that we already filled out, we're gonna use that information in the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. Before Voces sends it to the Benson Library at UT Austin and UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or your family members that you provided, so it will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Benson Library and at UTRGV University Library. So with that, question 5 and 6. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the Benson Library at UT Austin and UTRGV University Library Special Collections and Archives?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you. And the final question. On occasion, UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and Voces at UT Austin do receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with credible journalists?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you for your consent. Your experiences and stories mean a lot to us at UTRGV and Voces, And I look forward to what you have to say with the interview questions that will now follow. Okay, let's move on. So, again, Dr. Melba, thank you so much for your time. Like I said earlier, your stories and experiences are so valuable to us at UTRGV Special Collections and Archives and the Voces project. Particularly for us at UTRGV Special Collections, we're committed to preserving the stories of Mexican Americans and Latinos and Latinas from South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley. That's our main mission, to record the local regional stories of South Texas during the COVID-19 pandemic. So because you're an instructor of higher education in Brownsville at Texas Southmost-College, because you're an advocate of human dignity and humanitarian aid for asylum seekers in limbo at Matamoros with the nationally recognized group Team Brownsville, and because you are a wife, mother of 3 adult children, and a daughter providing care for her elderly mother at this time, I know you have many meaningful stories and experiences to share on how COVID-19 has impacted these important roles that you carry out in your life. So with that opening, let's, we'll go into the questions now. So the first question that I want to ask you, and this first set of questions, Dr. Melba, deals with the theme of your first understanding of COVID and your personal understanding of what the disease is, okay? So the first question that I want to ask you is, when did you first hear about COVID-19?
I can't recall exactly the date, but I would say in the first, maybe February of 2020.
Okay.
I think so, yes.
And do you remember if you heard about it on the radio, like social media, like Facebook, a certain local news?
Well, there's this program that I have. It's a 10-minute international show that I have my students listen to every day. And one of the gentlemen, the host, his name is Carl Azus, and it's called CNN 10, and it's 10 minutes of international news. So that's where I first heard of it. And then the students started asking, and then we started listening to what was happening in other parts of the world and how it was coming, and that we were, it was coming soon, and that it was going to change the way we lived. And I guess sometimes when some things like that happen and they're on the other side of the world, we think that it's not going to get here, and people are exaggerating, and it turned out that it wasn't an exaggeration, and now we're saturated here in the Rio Grande Valley. We're one of the hottest in a negative way. COVID epidemic is here.
Right. I guess, so when you first heard about it, you thought, your first reaction, just to recap, oh, it's far away, it's in other countries,
Yes.
China, Italy, but then it hits, and as you said, your students recalled about it too. I guess when it did hit, when it did hit local, how did your reaction change?
Well, I felt like everything was fine until about spring break, I would say mid-March. Then we started to see that the school districts and colleges were starting to pay attention. And they kept saying, well, maybe we'll have class, maybe we won't have class. And so the fact that I would cross almost every day to Mexico to the escuelita in Matamoros with the asylum seekers also kept me in check, because all of a sudden, I want to say March 19th is the date that they actually closed the border. And so that also captured my attention. Now what are we going to do? because everyone that helps out with the asylum seekers are volunteers. So then, and I have the dates of the last time that we crossed. So I guess because of my work and because of the activism and because I worked at the college, there were lots of signs everywhere that life was never going to be the same, the way that we knew it. So yes, it was March the 15th was the last face-to-face class that we had at the asylum seeker camp in Matamoros on the Rio Grande River.
Right. And so that was kind of like the moment when you realized when you could no longer cross the bridge with the fellow activists at Team Brownsville.
And Mexican government said that we could no longer have the children, because there were over 100 children that we teach. So that we couldn't have them in tents, we couldn't have them in places, people couldn't start gathering like they started having, like the church services locally and in Matamoros started closing their doors to the gatherings of people. So then we began to send videos over to Matamoros. So then we were teaching videos, but it wasn't quite the same.
It's kind of like with our students in education, it's not the same when you do the remote learning.
Right.
So,
but this time it was YouTube videos, and I learned all about that, and my husband made me a channel and he got a channel, and so we learned a lot because we had to. It was a way to survive. And then my students as well, many students were like, well, ma'am, when are we going back? I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't think we're going back. And so it was a harsh reality that life, like I said, would never return to be the same. When, as an educator, as a mom, as a grandmother, as everything, the food that we ate, we were no longer going to the stores. We started finding out about deliveries, and so we're still having our groceries delivered to our doorstep.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Melba. Yes, so it's like mid-March, all of these things just start to compound on each other. The U.S. Border Patrol tells Team Brownsville you can't cross anymore. But because you have that binational interaction, it's also the Mexican federales and the Mexican Tamaulipas government who also says you all can't come over here anymore because they have restrictions on group gatherings for your humanitarian work.
Yes, and before the camp was on the sidewalk, it was just like right on the street. But the Mexican government decided that they needed to be over the levee and right on the banks of the river. So the locale changed as well. So the people were no longer in sight, because once you have to go up the levee and then down the levee, and that's where the tents were situated now. And then during March, they started to put barbed wire. They actually started to fence them in. And so now they had control of who would go in and who wouldn't, and they had a gate, and the Marina, they're like National Guard here, the equivalent in the United States. So they were there with their machine guns guarding and making sure that everybody was behaving, and that we were no longer allowed to, for about, I would say, another 3 or 4 weeks, we could still take food over. And that World Central Kitchen came and helped us quite a bit. But at a certain point, they would no longer, there were like 15, 20, 30, however many of us would go to teach or would go and cross meals, we were no longer allowed to take food.
Okay. I I have some questions specific to Team Brownsville that
Yes.
that I want to get to.
All right.
And this is very fascinating stories that I want to pick up on very soon.
Okay.
To finish off the personal understanding and first encounters portion of the questions here, I'm also
Yes.
wondering, Dr. Melba, over the last few months, since that impactful moment in mid-March when we all realized this is hitting home now, our lives are
Yeah.
forever altered in this pandemic. Over the last few months, Dr. Melba, what kinds of news media, social media, what sources do you rely on to keep you informed about COVID-19?
Well, it really didn't matter what channel you turned the TV on. And I like to watch the Mexican channel because I believe that they cover more international. They have a different tweak on the news.
Is that
So
Telemundo or Univision?
yes, well, both.
Both. Okay.
Yes. And they also have done stories on the asylum seekers and on Team Brownsville, and we have actually appeared on some of their shows as well, talking about helping the asylum seekers in Matamoros. So generally, I watch MSNBC, the local news. Usually, I do Channel 5. My husband likes Channel 4 sometimes, but and every now and then I switch it to Fox to see what their take is on all of this.
Right.
So I guess I shop around, but basically it's MSNBC and Channel 3, well, Telemundo.
Telemundo.
Yes.
Okay. Can you share with me what you understand about COVID-19 as an infectious disease? Like, what do you understand about it in terms of what you've learned over the various news sources? Like, in terms of
I've learned that at the beginning it seemed like we kept hearing that the old folks homes, the assisted living homes, that they were being bombarded with people that were passing away, and it was 20, 30, 40. How can so many, I kept thinking, how can so many people die in one little area? So at the beginning, it seemed like it was a respiratory disease that was attacking people who were already ill and were up in age. And so therefore, that doesn't mean me, right? That you always, it's it's out there, but it's not affecting me. But then we started to see that this respiratory infection started to attack young children and teenagers, and then we started to see that teachers that were young, like in their 30s and 20s, were being taken ill. Some went to the hospital, some passed away. And then we started to hear about children getting ill as well. So I guess reality check was that you actually started hearing, oh, this art teacher passed away, and this English teacher passed away, and this, and the hospitals are full, and there's no place, and there's so we're being tested right now through the fire. Mm-hmm. And there are people that have passed that I used to teach with, and that used to teach with my mom, and that people that are younger than we are, and people that are our age. So we are not exempt, and that we have to be careful. We have to, I remember in early January that I got very sick, and everybody thought it was the flu. My husband is the kind that always gets his flu shot, right? So he went and he got his flu shot, and he ended up getting the flu anyway. That's what I said. Since I'm a cancer survivor, I'm always leery about getting injected and things like that, because I feel like I'm okay, I'm gonna be all right. But then I also got an upper, well, when I went to get checked at it was a day and night clinic, they told me it was upper respiratory infection. And I was very sick. I mean, my whole chest, I was just feverish. And then, my husband and I were discussing that this week. Maybe we had COVID and we didn't know, because
Well,
we don't know.
in January, it was too new, especially for the Valley here in South Texas.
Yes.
Have you thought about maybe getting an antibody test to see if maybe you have?
My husband wants to do that, and he went recently to give blood, so we'll see what happens.
Okay. Likewise, can you share with me what you would like to know about coronavirus, about COVID-19? Are there still things that you don't understand, that if you could ask someone like, say, Sanjay Gupta, or someone not like Dr. Fauci, what would you ask them about COVID-19 to help clear up your understanding?
Well, I believe that the rumor is that there's a vaccine, and I saw a report where in Germany they have something. I heard in England and I think yesterday or the day before, Russia. So apparently there's going to be a vaccine before 2020 is over, and so let's see what happens. Let's see if it works.
Okay. So that actually leads me to my next and second to last question in this first set.
Yes.
Would you take the very first COVID-19 vaccine available on the market? And why or why not?
I don't want to be first, but I don't want to be first. But as I see that people that I know and that it works, then I would have to consult with my doctors at MD Anderson in Houston. I would consult, of course, with your primary health care physician, and so it wouldn't be something that I would do without an authority's blessing.
Right. Okay. And then the last question for this first set,
Yes.
does your family hold the same beliefs and ideas about COVID-19 as you, or are there some members who take it more seriously or maybe more lightly than you?
I believe that some of my children are very worried about my husband and me. They're always wanting to make sure, like when I take pictures and I put pictures on Facebook, they're like, how come you didn't have a mask? Where were you, Mom? And I'm like, outside, I'm feeding the birds. There's no one near me. So I was filling the bird feeders. But like when I go visit my mother, we always have my mother's 85, and we spend 2 or 3 days with her right now. We're actually taking turns, the 3 sisters, and so everybody needs to be ready to put on their mask, even if you're helping her bathe or cooking or whatever. And she refuses to put on a mask. We already bought her all colors, all sizes, sports, and her flowers, whatever, but she won't put it on. She can't breathe, she says. So.
It's kind of like your children, that generation, they get on you and your husband, and then likewise you and your husband or you and your sisters get on your mama for the same things that your children. It's like this generational, come on.
Right. It's a domino effect.
Domino effect of supervising the older generation.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Melba. Let's move into the next set of questions. This is on familia, on family. So just like you shared with me in pre-interview and even now in this interview, you have 3 adult children living in different regions of Texas. And you also have your 85-year-old mother who you and your sisters are caring for. So the first question on this section, how has COVID-19 impacted your family life in terms of the way that you interact and visit with your adult children? How's it impacted the family dynamic?
Well, generally in July, all of us get together somewhere. Like last year, we got together at South Padre Island. And so my daughter, who's a chef, had her week off. And then my daughter-in-law was able to get also a week off. Everybody, and generally it wasn't the 4th of July, we would do it afterwards. So I also had a foreign exchange student that we had for many years ago when she was in high school. Of course, now she's an adult. She came from Turkey. She lives in Istanbul, and she brought her baby. So we were able to visit with her 5-year-old. And so we had the house full, and I mean, we just carried on a regular, and as you know how Facebook sends you pictures or memories or videos, I was thinking about how we couldn't do that this year. Everything stopped.
So this was in July 2019.
It was 2019, yes. Okay. Yes. But at this point, we've already had, one of my granddaughters turned 1 year old in March. Well, we couldn't go, but my sister came to visit my mother from Dallas. So I sent the piñata and all the goodie bags with her. So in the end, because that granddaughter lives in Houston, they were planning a party, but they didn't have the party either. But we do have a picture with her on her high chair with her big cupcake piñata.
Have you all been using social media more, like Facebook or Instagram, to help bridge the gap?
We played chalupa on Monday when we were over staying at Mom's. So we were able to play the loteria, you know, the Mexican bingo that we have. So that's been different. You don't know what's going on, but at least my mother got to see the children, and I got to see the grandkids. And so that's one way we do it. We also have with the adult children on Monday nights, we have game night. So we play like categories, and we play these games that they come up with, and they're the ones that fix up the the actual invite, like Zoom invite, and then they have these games that we play that sometimes but you're on your own, you know, like you have to be honest with whatever answers you're. And we also have once a week we get together with friends and we pray the rosary. So we usually do that on Wednesdays. And the different compadres and madrinas, and you know.
And that's on Facebook Live or what?
No, we do it on Zoom. We do it on Zoom.
Okay. For we're praying the rosary with your comadres and compadres,
yes,
and for the family too.
Yeah,
Zoom.
But separate. I mean, but we do it, of course, separate nights or separate.
Right.
So
that's a way to adapt using Zoom.
It's not the same, but at least you hear their voice and you see their faces, and my mother's amazed. She's just thrilled that she can see the children.
Right. See and hear. Right.
Yes.
And so from loteria to categories to the rosary, all of that, all of the Mexican culture.
Yes.
Games and
my daughter that's a chef, she'll prepare for game night. She and her other 2 roommates are chefs as well. So they just pan and they show us, look, this is what we're eating, and we're all over here with our Fritos and bean dip. The menu is different. So we're learning as we go.
Right.
But we find a way to connect.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So those are the family adaptations that you've made to life during the pandemic.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
can you tell me a little bit more about kind of a continuation of what we were talking about in the pre-interview with regard to how COVID-19 has impacted individually the lives of your three children? Because I know you said that one of your daughters is
Yes.
was a chef at a very renowned Dallas restaurant, and then your son is married to a healthcare practitioner in Houston, and I think you have another
Yes.
daughter who's an educator or in education.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So how can you share how COVID has impacted your children, adult children?
So I'm gonna say the 4th of July, right, the first week of July, we got a phone call from my son, letting us know that his wife had tested positive. Her name is Kate. Kate is a doctor at Herman Memorial Tier Center, and it's a special physical therapy type of doctor. I mean, they specialize. Head trauma is her specialty, so she actually works with people that have COVID, and so in her job, they have to test every day before they go into their posts. And so they were in quarantine for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. And she has a 1-year-old daughter and she has a 3-year-old daughter. And so my son is a school teacher. So luckily he wasn't working at that time. So she could not go to work. She had to be in certain side of the house, but because she still breastfeeding, that was a little bit of a challenge, but they managed. And two and a half weeks later, she was able to test again, and her job, the people in where she works, very understanding and very um, good. It's a good place to work, and she's back at work.
So was Kate able to isolate so she didn't spread it to the
Well,
baby and your husband, or did
well,
they also get it?
I believe that she's one of the asymptomatic, because like she said she never lost her taste, like some people say that you can't smell, you can't taste, but she's also one that works out quite a bit, and she eats the right food, and she sleeps the right a number of hours, and so very healthy, very health conscious, and even before the pandemic. So I believe she just said she was a little tired, more than usual.
Tired, but other than
But
that,
I mean, but she like runs 5 miles or something. Maybe she ran 4 or like it wasn't that she was tired and she just needed a rest, and that's how it happened. But of course, very very trying times, because you don't know what's going to happen.
and your son had to parent
Yes,
and primarily manage
yes,
the 3-year-old and the newborn, the 1-year-old.
yes, yes.
And so did she decide to continue breastfeeding, or did the baby go on formula for that time that she was in
No,
quarantine?
well, now they have those breast pumps, so it's very, very easy. They put them in the little bags and they put them in the freezer, and so
Yeah, yeah,
there's modern technology.
right. Okay.
So yes, and they're healthy. Everybody's healthy right now. So we're glad that we got over that. And then I have a daughter, the one that's a chef in Dallas, that several places had to close down. She said that because of the pandemic, many people were affected. They were letting people go. There's no customers. The restaurants are closed. She did say people were laid off, and a lot of people that work are people that are that are
Industry.
that they don't have another income. That's it. That's all they do. And there are a lot of people that are immigrants that maybe this is their only way. This is their only lifeline. So her boss actually had them go into the pantries and to the freezers, and they gave all the food away to the employees that they were letting go because they didn't, I mean, they gave them their paycheck, but they also gave them foods because if the restaurant was going to close, why not give it to people that, you know, are going to need it and use it? So that was something different. There were very few that were left. And my daughter said, I went from being the pastry chef to, okay, well, now we're going to clean the stoves and we're going to wash and we're going to, so it was like they had to find ways to keep the restaurant clean and get it ready for whenever it is that they open. So
and your daughter, she was she went to culinary school in Paris, right? You said that she was at the
no, she didn't go to Paris. It was a cordon bleu that's home based over there. Well, yeah, she wanted to, but Dallas is the closest she got. So there's actually a cordon bleu extension in Dallas.
Okay. And so
that's where she went to school, and that's where she studied.
Okay. Yeah. And she was working for
she was at that yes, that Reunion Tower, but right before the pandemic she switched jobs. So when she switched the job, now during the pandemic, she found out that they're no longer going to be in operation at all, not just during the pandemic. So luckily she had made the switch to work for another gentleman that has about 8 restaurants throughout the Dallas area. So she actually goes from restaurant to restaurant teaching her recipes to the different chefs.
And she's able to earn her income now through.
Well, she got some kind of reduction because many of the restaurants were closed, but little by little they're opening and getting normalized. But she did have to, as a matter of fact, I think it's right now that this week she's moving. She needed to move to a smaller apartment that's a little more reasonable. So you get a cut in income and then you realize, okay, well, now I have to move. So one of the roommates decided that there were 3 roommates and now it's just going to be 2. So she even started to work like the Uber Eats, where you go and you deliver food. You don't make the food, but you work in delivering food. So she did that for a while on the side. And people that know her work would call and say, hey, can you make me a wedding cake? It's going to be something small. It's going to be, so people that know of her work would call her, and then she could, she can make money like that as well.
Wow. So out of your daughter-in-law, who's a healthcare professional, your son, who's an educator, and then your other daughter, who's in culinary, the chef who seems to be most impacted.
Yes.
Life changes.
Yes. And then my other daughter, she works with professional development in early childhood centers in San Antonio. So she goes like from school to school and she works with the parents of 3 and 4-year-olds and helps them to adjust to when children are going to school. And she has to do her workshops in English and in Spanish because we have a lot of population there of non-English speakers. So she went back to work about the last week of July, and within the first week, somebody in her office got COVID. So everybody was sent back home and you had to work from your house. And just yesterday, she started back in an office, but It was an office of 5 people, so they took and they made they took 5 different like closets or storage rooms. So now everybody has their own place, very small, but they have their computer and they have their everything that they need to continue communicating with the parents and starting up the school year with. I don't know how it's going to be now, but there's a lot of school districts giving computers and somehow getting Wi-Fi for the parents and the children, and so they can continue with their not so regular school year.
Right.
And so she is blessed that her husband also works for Gold's Gym, and he's like a district manager, and he goes from gym to gym. And as you know, they closed because of the pandemic. People couldn't go work out and so on and so forth. So his mom lives in Brownsville, so the mom agreed to go and live with them so that now someone can be home, because they've decided that they're not going to send their children to school at this time. So now abuelita can be there, not me, but the other abuelita. And so when she makes great food and
Providing the child care.
good stories and so on and so forth. The child care center where my grandkids went to school actually closed forever.
Oh, wow.
So they were going to have to find another place. So for now, the children are well taken care of, and my daughter-in-law that lives in Houston's parents bought a condo in their same neighborhood, even though they live here in Brownsville, but they're also going to they're putting their house up for sale soon. So they're actually in the same neighborhood. So in case of an emergency, my grandkids have their grandmothers.
That's fascinating how what you're saying, that the at least from what your family branch and tree, the grandparents are relocating to be closer to help their adult children step up with the daycare and child care so they can.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yes.
Fascinating.
So yes, and one of them, my comadre from the one that lives in San Antonio now is she was a provider, but her job ended here in Brownsville, so it was a perfect time. And then, her son said, "Hey, Mom, come on over. We need your help, and we'll match or better your pay." Plus, she gets her own bedroom and her own, space. I tell my daughter-in-law, my daughter says, but the kids just want to be in her room, and I'm like, well, no, you need to put a sign and say, Grandma needs time out. She needs her own time.
Grandma needs to recharge.
Or get in the car and go somewhere, but now you can't go anywhere. So.
Okay, that's amazing.
So yeah, it has changed our lives all the way around.
Okay, so I want to ask a question about your husband.
Yes.
Because you mentioned that he was a public school educator for many years at BISD, Brownsville Independent School District, but he recently retired. Did COVID-19 factor into his retirement decision, or was this just coincidental timing?
It was coincidental.
Okay.
May 31st was his last day after 40 years with the school district. The educators, the special education educators that he worked with, had a little parade, surprise parade. They came by our house honking and balloons in their cars, and everybody came by, and we couldn't see each other like normal or have a retirement party, but they were very kind. They brought a real nice trophy from the district level, the region, Special Olympics region, because he had done so much work with Special Olympics track meets, with bowling, with a variety of events. in Austin and San Antonio and Dallas and Arlington. So he wants to take some time off, but we had no idea that COVID was coming when he made his decision. So I told him, look what happened. I mean, and there's usually at the end of the year, they have a special ceremony for people who are going to retire, and they have a nice dinner and you dress up and they have music. And he had told me last year that he didn't want to go to that thing. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to go take a picture. He didn't want to, I told him, look what happened. You got what you wanted. Be careful what you wished for sometimes. So, but he got a gift certificate for what's the name of that place? Olive Garden. Almost like $200. So we were able to use that for Father's Day.
Did you go eat in the restaurant, or was it a curbside?
No, we didn't. No, we actually went to Houston, and we went to visit. We stayed at my brother's house, and so he has a big swimming pool, so we just ate outside. Okay. And you know how there's that restaurants everywhere, so we had plenty of pasta and bread for the familia.
That's good. And so do you feel a kind of like a sense of relief that your husband is not going to be returning to the 2020-21 school year?
Well, I tell him that because, you know, we've seen that, we know quite a few parents of the special needs children, because a lot of times they were homebound, so he would go to their houses, and you get to know the familias after a while. And we have a lot of people that are calling already saying, hey, you know, can you help us? Can you do this? Can you do that? And it's difficult enough with children who are not special needs. So I can't imagine how much more difficult it's going to be. Even in the spring when we went to remote, he would call the parents, and the parents would say, no, the child, and this was elementary child, doesn't want to get out of bed. He says that the school bus is not coming, and so he doesn't have school, so he's not going to get out of his bed because he's tired, and for the mom to stop asking him. So, but my husband would send videos of things to do, even though you don't have a ball around the house. You get a wad of socks, when you put the socks into a little ball and, put it into a box or whatever. My son, who is also a physical ed teacher in Houston, made some videos with his 3-year-old. So it was amazing, things like you would make a little basketball court with a cereal box, Cheerios. You just don't think of it, how you can, things that you already have at home that you put in a recycling bin. And so we got creative. And then I would also send those videos to the escuelita over in Matamoros. So the parents took over, and the parents are still the teachers over there now, and we just send supplies and so on and so forth. So we've learned that life, and like I told my husband, you're not really going to feel being retired because it's still summer. And we haven't gotten into the regular school year, and of course we're not going to for a while now with the computer. But like we ordered a printer. I didn't really have a printer because I really didn't need one because I have an office. Well, now we're not in our offices, so we're doing paperwork to get all my office equipment over to my house so that we can, because I have a laptop, but it's not the same as the one in my office. It's like a movie screen for my eyes because I grade essays every night. So yes, we've been affected, and we're trying to, now he has agreed to be my personal secretary. So that's not too bad for me.
There you go. It keeps him active too. He
yes.
has
and he's a great cook also.
There you go. Okay. So this is the last question of the family section.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
like you said, that you and your sisters are taking turns caring for
yes,
your mother,
yes,
85-year-old mother who lives in Brownsville, which
yes.
is just a few miles down the road. You live in Rancho Viejo, right? Which is a
Yes,
community
yes. It's
north
about
of
20
Brownsville.
minutes. 20
Yeah,
minutes. Yes.
yeah. So can you talk about why you and your sisters decided to make this arrangement?
Well, we decided to make the arrangement because the caregivers, one of the caregivers for my mother's parents were got COVID, the mom and the dad. And so she still, lives with her parents. So uh, then it's been, I think, almost a month that she's been out, and we told her to take the time that she needed to care for her mom, and that we would pick up the slack because right now, we aren't in school. And so we decided that everybody would do 2 days a week, and Sundays we would alternate. One Sunday, one sister, the other Sunday. And so everybody gets a Sunday in the month, and then we start the rotation again. So that's, and of course, you have to learn about meds, and you have to learn about all the things that it's not that we don't know what to do, but my mother's a diabetic. So sometimes, you got to watch what she's eating. And we decided, because our days are Mondays and Tuesdays, and then on Wednesdays, we come home, we tag team with my other sister. Uh, we decided that we would pre-cook meals. So all of Sunday afternoon, my husband and I will prepare the meals for mom. So not breakfast, of course, but like lunch. So we did, some pasta with shrimp, and we did some broccoli, and some healthy things.
To watch your
And
sugar,
we
yeah.
did lasagna, but the lasagna, instead of putting hamburger meat, we put turkey meat that she said would tasted delicious. I said, Mom, you don't even know that it was turkey. So she really enjoyed that. And then, of course, salads at every meal. And so, but I like the fact that we took everything already in the casserole dishes and we put it in the fridge. And that way, whenever she said she was hungry, we would. And so it was a little bit easier. That way, our whole focus is just for her novelas, going outside, and being in the garden, and doing things. She likes to write, so she likes to write poetry. She likes to write stories. And one of her very close college friends passed. He and his wife both passed away within 24 hours of each other this past month of COVID. Yes. So while he was in the hospital, uh, I happened to be taking an art class during COVID. I'd never taken watercolor. I took it through Zoom, recommended by somebody else. So there were a lot of art teachers in the group. And so I would find out, oh, Mom, he's doing better. And he was getting better. And then all of a sudden, they both passed away within 24 hours of each other. So she's been writing stories and telling me stories about him. So I said, Mom, I told her about the funeral, and they had a viewing. There were only like 10 people allowed in the funeral home. And I said, obviously we can't go. You already know that. And she understood that. But they actually have a video camera there, so you could pray, or it was very sad. But I told my mother that was they had a picture of the couple, because they had like two caskets instead of one, and a picture of them individually and then together. And the they mentioned that if you were going to go to the burial, that they would prefer that it would just be family, but they had like 7 or 8 brothers and sisters on each side. I mean, it's a big family. And everybody should be wearing white clothing, not dark. And so I was able to show mom through the video. So it was closure, but it wasn't exactly. And then we found out when the funeral was going to be. So we called a caterer, somebody that we know that bakes bread and makes. So we send over food. So at the time, like that we thought like 5-ish, 6-ish, when we thought the family would be home and would, everybody needs to eat, right? No matter what. So,
especially when, yeah.
so I think she felt better because, and I told her, and I put everything from you, and when things, change, we can, maybe for Christmas or Thanksgiving, I can type out some of those stories and put them in a little book and.
Yeah. So with your mother losing her dear friends and being diabetic and in a vulnerable population because of the diabetes as well as her age, are you and your sisters being extra cautious now about how you go out maybe to stores? Are you doing curbside more or being any more?
No, we're doing delivery. When you're over 60, you get free H-E-B and Walmart and Sam's, so they bring it right to your door.
Right. That's
We're
good.
also doing something called Imperfect foods that we learned from my daughter that's a chef. Okay. Ever since, even before the pandemic, that's how the chefs eat. They get these places. It's Imperfect food. If you're interested, I'll give you a coupon for $10 off. Anyway, and it's a box, and they come to your door. If you want poultry, if you want, I mean, like fresh fruits, veggies, and the reason they're called imperfect food is because, like say the carrot is not completely, slim. It's got like 2 carrots growing out, but it's amazing. You can freeze some of the stuff. I get broccoli, asparagus, cut them up, put them in the freezer, and then make them whenever.
That's good.
So we've learned that I am eating much better now during the pandemic, because if I were at work, I would just be picking up whatever, fried stuff and take it to your office and eat there while you're grading or whatever. And I have noticed, and I'm drinking a lot of water. I also entered a walking contest, and it was something that they put together for, I don't know if they did it at UTRGV, but they did it at TSC. And it was like you walk 5,000 steps a day for 2 months. And they had a special monitor, right? That you, not monitor, like a stepper that's in your phone. And then every Monday you would send in your steps. Anyway, I came out in the top 10. So I was shocked too. And that's because I only did it for 30 days. I don't know how some people got like 300 million steps. Anyway, I got I don't remember if it was 150 or 130,000 steps in 30 days. So I was rather shocked about that. But don't think I run, or I would just, I would get the phone and walk away in the afternoon after my novela. I started watching novelas too. I didn't used to do that.
Well, with your mom, right?
Yes.
Adapting to new rhythms of life in COVID-19.
Yes, and now I know how to watercolor too. I have like about 20 or 30 paintings that I made. I didn't even know I could paint. So
there's some silver linings, I guess.
Yes, some positives. Yes.
Okay, so now, Dr. Melba, these next questions are about Team Brownsville.
Yes.
Okay. So the first one, just to get some background on Team Brownsville, When did the organization start?
Well, about 2 years ago, we got a phone call from a friend of ours that works for ACLU. And he asked if my husband and I would be interested to take a drive to McAllen because the bus station was getting overloaded with people that were being let out of the ICE detention centers. And they had hundreds, and like 500, 800 a day that were going through the McAllen bus station, and they needed help. So we got over there, and my husband called a couple of his friends and invited them to follow us. And they're like, no, we're not going to follow you. We'll go pick you up in our car. So the four of us got to McAllen, and of course, this was the time that they were separating the families. So sometimes some of the parents had their kids and others didn't, and it was such chaos. So then we started, two of us stayed back, and then I stayed at the bus station. My husband and I don't remember Sergio or Mike, I forgot which one, stayed with me. And they went to the dollar store. They bought out all of the color books that they could find. We found wipes, we found soap, we found granola bars, just things that we started getting. We also met other activists there, the Angry Tias and Abuelas. I don't know if you've heard of that group.
Yes.
But we saw them and met them, and we're like, hey, who are you all? You know, who are we? Well, we're just some teachers that got together, and we got a phone call that y'all need help, and so here we are. And so that's how it started. So every day, and it was I think it was June or July. So we would go to McAllen because it was summer and we weren't teaching summer school, and so we would go over there, and that's how it started. Sister Norma has a respite center. At that time, it was a couple of blocks from the actual bus station. Wow. So they would bring people, they would go take the shower and get ready for their bus trips. And we would give little, at that time, my mother and I started making pillows too. They were called pillows of love. It's just a little pillow that so you could put on, you know, when you're traveling, you know, on your back, on your neck. We made over 8,000 of those throughout all this time, and so there's actually documentation and stories about that. That's on the side. So then we got other teachers interested that wanted to come with us. And so what happened was that over there in Reynosa and that bridge, there was a lot of need. But then we started hearing and seeing that Brownsville was starting to get asylum seekers. I don't know if you remember how in the news they had all the caravans coming from Central America, and some of them were going to El Paso, some of them were going to Juarez, some of them were going to. So we started to have an influx of asylum seekers. At that time, they did not have the migrant protection protocol in place. So we were serving little snacks at the bus station for free. We were giving children books, Spanish books. We were giving sweaters. So that's how it started. It kind of snowballed, and we did not become a nonprofit until last summer. So, but we were still working. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't have a name, but we were a bunch of teachers, counselors, special needs and regular teachers that started getting together and helping. So we would have shifts. We would have people at the bus station by, 5 o'clock in the morning. And then generally they would close by around 11. And then what would happen is that a van would show up at the bus station and would just drop people off. And they had been like incarcerated for I don't know how many months or weeks. And they would just leave them there, okay? The people, they had no shoelaces because when you go to jail, they take away your shoelaces because you might commit suicide. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know. Same thing with belts. Like if you had a belt to keep your pants up, they take that away from you. But then when they release you, they don't give them back to you. They don't give you anything. So people were walking around holding their pants up, and you couldn't walk with your shoe without shoelaces. So we started. Michael Benavides and Sergio Cordova started GoFundMe. They started, and then we started showing pictures on Facebook, like, hey, look, this is what's happening. You want to help us? And so we started getting a lot of people noticing that there was a need. And as a matter of fact, last year, Sergio Cordova and Mike Benavides won the award for GoFundMe. Like they flew them to San Francisco. Out of all the NGOs, all the nonprofits in the United States, they won first place for helping and so I mean it became a national thing. Like there were people here that we had, like Jorge Ramos from the Mexican stations, and what's his name? I already forgot. The ones from MSNBC. We had people from CBS. There were people from. We started appearing in even like in the New York Times. There were articles about Team Brownsville, about what we were doing, and I know that the pillow article, we appeared in Washington D.C. My mom and I appeared there, sewing, making our pillows. In California as well, different. So we started getting media coverage, and so then we started getting more donations. Then people started to, hey, we want to connect. We got the groups from California, groups from New York. I didn't even know there was so many kinds of, because there were many churches that helped, but the majority were other organizations, like the New Orleans Grannies. I didn't even know that there was such a NOLA. That's what they call themselves. And they're still helping us even now. We have a group of New York Mujeres associated with Bank College in New York City. I just got 300 raincoats for the children just today in the mail. So, and I have a fund going on right now, trying to buy 300 pairs of rain boots, because as you'll see later on, you'll see what happens when it rains and you're living right there in the banks of the river. A mess, and all in tents, and I know. So we started to buy tents. We started to ask people to donate tents. I don't know. It just we never expected that it would come to this point. We used to walk in. 2 years ago, they would only let us cross 4 bags, like just regular handbags with food, groceries, whatever, to Mexico. So we would pay for park, and then we would carry 4 bags each to the because there's 3 or 4 bridges, here in Brownsville. So we would go to the old bridge, and that's where we started to see people. And then we got tarps for them, and they were just on the cement. I mean, just right there by the bridge, because at a certain point the Border Patrol and the agents they're actually in the middle of the bridge now. I don't know if you know that, but they actually, like, you don't cross the bridge, but in the middle of the bridge now they have a checkpoint, and that's where you show your passport, and that's where they ask you if you're American citizens and all that. So we started to bring umbrellas. little ice chests so that people, because you know it's 100 degrees here in the summer. And so we started to help people out, and then we started making connections, and people were like, well, you know, I can do this and I can do that. I can take over chicken, we can take over pizza, we can. And so we we kind of started like that, nickel and diming everything, tacos. And then we got in trouble because they said that those people, you know, that were homeless, they were an eyesore for, you know,
and this is Team Brownsville had to like change up their efforts because the MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocol,
that came a year later. That came last year. That
stopped the flow of asylum seekers into the bus station. So now instead of giving humanitarian aid at the bus stations, you all had to actually cross the bridge because being held in deplorable conditions by the banks of the Rio Grande in Matamoros by the International Gateway Bridge in Brownsville, right?
Yes, and as it turns out, the first asylum seekers that we saw were not from Central America. We had a lot of Cubans. We had a lot of people from Cameroon. We had some people from China. I mean, a lot of people think, well, it's just, you know, people coming from Guatemala. No, it's not just that. You know, we had people from Venezuela. We had some people that didn't speak English or Spanish, and we didn't know sign language, and we're just like, how are we going to figure this out? Because a lot of times, you know, like if you try to do sign language, like, do you want food? They think that we're selling it, you know, and they didn't have money, and so. So then it morphed, it got bigger and bigger, and then we actually started seeing that, and the Cuban people that were coming were people that were very educated. You had professors from universities, you had doctors, you had eye surgeons, you had, and they were, and the reason we could tell is because even though they were there in the sidewalk, they had name brand clothes. They were wearing shoes and apparel that, you know, was pricey. And
apart from the working class, more like, you know, so other folks, from blue collar sectors.
And even in the tent, in the tarps that we would take over, they were like, well, it's just, I'm like, no, well, everyone's going to share here, okay? It doesn't matter that they're from there, because it was, you know, like kids, like you have to make them, you know what? Even though you don't know them, guess what? We're all going to share the chicken, or we're all going to share the pizza. And it's not, these are my waters. No, these waters, this ice chest is for everybody. Because then you started seeing, and then of course moms were coming and they needed milk for the babies, and so luckily there was an OXXO there, a drugstore, that we could go buy the needle milk that is full of nutrition. I don't know, I found out a lot about formula and things that I had already forgotten. But diapers, people were sick. What are we gonna do? I mean, presently, Doctors Without Borders is helping there at the migrant camp right now. We have the global management response. We have had the kitchen, the World Central Kitchen, was here like January. I would say January through March, because after they closed the bridge, what they did is, because people that work with World Central Kitchen are from everywhere. They're from all over the world. So if they needed to fix food from Nicaragua, well, they had recipes. If they needed to fix food from Honduras, or from El Salvador, or from Venezuela, from Nicaragua, so that was very interesting, because we've learned a lot of things. I think once they put me in charge of the education program, I thought that I was going to teach, but guess what? I learned more from those children.
And so we can talk more about that because your specialization in Team Brownsville was Escuelita
De la
uh,
banqueta,
La
yes,
Banqueta, which
yes.
was an educational, I guess, programming and.
Yes, 1 year, yesterday was our anniversary of 1 year that we started the school in the Matamoros. But it was just outside. We didn't have tents until, I guess it was around December that we actually got some
And what
tents so that we could have classes.
what gave you the idea to do the Escuelita? Was it
Well,
others?
because it was back to school, because it was time, after MPP started being enforced, the policies, then we realized that, okay, well, we're all going back to school, but what's going to happen to these kids? Hundreds of kids here. So the only day that we could all help was Sunday because all of us were teaching during the week. So we decided, okay, well, we're gonna have escuelita and it's gonna be Sunday mornings, and a lot of people, well, that's when I go to church. Well, that's when, okay, whatever. But meanwhile, I would tell them, once you skip church and you come with us, you can see the face of God in those little babies.
Right.
We had kids, we had moms, coming in with their toddlers, sitting them in their lap and doing, the little whatever we were doing, and we had them divided by, well, when we first started, we had like 20 kids, and it grew to about 150 by March. But then we started dividing them. We had all the teenagers in one tent, and they stayed like the whole hour all together. So we had teachers that were specializing with them, secondary, and then we had the daycare, the moms that had kids up to maybe about 4 years, maybe up to 3 years old. And then we started. I said, we need to get some kind of order going here because, and of course, we started getting volunteers from all over the country. People were coming in droves. And you'll see, I'll send you some videos of so that you can actually see what was going on. And we had reading, we had writing, we had math, we had some from professors from UTRGV come over, some art teachers come over and help and do some amazing things with the children. We started and
you had a library too.
well, that started before the school because I just started bringing books over, and then I made a connection with Reforma Children in Crisis. It's a group that collects books for children that are in crisis anywhere, but especially in these people that were fleeing violence and wars, and so they started to send me books, and I was amazed at I know that I had over 1,000 books in that library at one point. Of course, we've had floods and we had hurricanes and so on. A lot of books have been ruined, but even right now, if you were to cross to Mexico right now, you could see our little biblioburros, is what I call them, the bookshelves. We started with one that used to belong to my mother when she was a teacher. And so we took that one over and I started putting books in. I told the children that this was a library and that we were going to start with one biblioburro and we're going to fill it with books, and the moms could come and check out books with them. And we had, I always asked for bilingual, but Spanish was good. And of course, people started sending me and then I had, because I had worked for a school, VIST, the school district locally, I had principals saying, you know what, our books are going to be out of adoption, and they told me to throw all these away. Do you want them? I'm like, yes. And so, some would bring them to me, and some I would go and pick them up. But just the fact that some of those books were brand new, nobody had touched them. I mean, they're like a new adoption, and so therefore, what are we going to do with these books? Some of them hardcover. A lot of them were hardcover books, so they actually had lessons in there. And even right now, when the storm came in, the asylum seeker parents sent me pictures, so I posted those. I'm like, look, this is what happened to our library. before the pandemic, we had about 20 biblioburros, which are the rolling bookshelves, full of books. And so all that, access. Yeah, right now, every day I get books. So, but generally, the priorities are diapers, wipes. What are we going to cross today? So somebody from Team Brownsville tries to cross, if not every day, every other day, but every day we get more restrictions and more restrictions and more restrictions that we can't cross supplies and items like that. But we continue. My goal right now is to get 300 pairs of rain boots for the children because hurricane season has just begun.
Right.
And we've already had 2 floods there in the camp. And so right now I have collected about 300 raincoats, all donations from my Facebook. And right now we have 19 pairs of boots, but I know that once we finish this interview, I'm going to go outside and they're going to be boxes. Some have names on them and some don't. And they're just, before the pandemic, and I would say a year ago, we could cross pretty much anything and we wouldn't get questioned. Now everything has to have brand new, it has to have tags on it, that you can only cross like $300 worth of merchandise if you're going to cross from the US to Mexico, and where's your receipt. And then of course if you cross anything else that's more expensive like our tents and things like that, then you have to pay a tax.
Is that Mexico's way of
Like
protecting?
30%, it's a lot.
Right? Is that like because you need new items? Is that in response to COVID?
Well, because I guess because it was a market, we used to take used clothes. I mean, slightly used. And they started telling us, no, you can't. If you're going to bring clothes, it has to be brand new. Well, so then we started also connecting with people in Matamoros. And so because Matamoros has a Sam's and they have a Walmart and they have a lot of stores that we have here. So some people would send gift cards, some people. And so as long as we had a contact and a van, in Matamoros, then we could get things cheaper and your money goes further as well. But generally on books, they would let me take as many books. I would have like 20 beach carts full of books. Okay, we're taking these books over. Generally in books, they wouldn't give me a hard time with books or school supplies.
Dr. Melba, at the high point, what was the population of the encampments in Matamoros?
2,500. We had 2,500 before the pandemic broke. Okay. And right now we are at about 980 at the last count a couple of weeks ago because people have started to leave. People have started thinking the courts for the asylum seekers are indefinitely closed. What are you going to do? You're going to live in the river? You're going to live in the river with your kids and you don't have food and you don't have a job and your children get sick and then there's the pandemic. And so there's a lot of, so some people, they actually bring to the area where the asylum seekers are, they bring 5 or 6 charter buses and they tell them, hey, free trip. We'll take you all the way down south and take you back to your country, to Tapachula, over there to Chiapas, and drop you off free of charge.
So some of that 2/3 that have left, some of them have returned on those charter buses back to their countries.
Yes, and some have gone to other areas where they feel like it's easier to cross. But the thing is, now with the courts closed, it doesn't matter which port of entry you travel to. You're stuck because you're not going to get over there. You're not going to get across.
So they've
so some people swim across illegally. Some people hire coyotes. Some people, become part of the, clandestine dealings. I mean, you have around the river, there's a lot of things happening that are illegal, and so they become part of that as well.
Narco or sex.
Oh yes, todo eso, all that. Yes.
Or I think in our pre-interview you mentioned that some have decided to seek a nationalization or their citizenship in
Oh,
Mexico.
yes, yes. But apparently you have to go to Monterrey to do that, through Monterrey. So I don't know how they're doing that, but there are some that have decided, you know what, let me get a job here in Mexico and see what happens and wait.
But as of
And
now, there's still a little under 1,000 that are keeping their dream alive of trying
yes,
to seek
yes,
asylum in the
yes,
United States. And
yes.
roughly how many are children or
Right
young?
now, well, I'm just going by the escuelita, about 300.
300.
Yes. And so that's why my goal is 300 raincoats, 300 pairs of boots, 300.
And then
But we also have a lot of pregnant moms, moms that are going to give birth before they go to court.
mhm.
And so, and people have drowned. You've seen that in the news right here from the camp where we are. Uh, a young man and his daughter, and then a lady and her son, and they've died there.
And are the mothers giving birth in the encampment in the tents, or are they
Well,
transferred to?
well, they're transferred to a local place, but we do have that GRM where there's a doctor there and some nurses, and they take care of giving them like Pedialyte and Pediasure and do the best you can, and then we take over like baby clothes, because over there when you go give birth and you're an asylum seeker, guess what? You don't get anything. So you're not going to have, the sanitary napkins you're going to need as a mom. You're not going to have the formula, the breast pads, all the things that you need as a new mom and with a newborn. So we rush over there. And so Team Brownsville has been instrumental in keeping the hope up for them.
All of the minute basic needs that
Yeah,
we
yes,
tend to overlook of post-maternity care and as you
yes. And before we had tents, everybody was outside. So we had blankets, we had tarps, we had, and then all of a sudden, okay, well, what about tents? And then, well, what about this? And what about that? And it just got bigger and bigger, and people started to make a home, and people have been there over 1 year. Started living on a park bench, and now we're a little more organized now. We actually have some things called tiendas. We have 4 tiendas, which are free stores, where let's say you just arrive and you go and you're like, I have 4 children, and so we get tents for them. They get blankets, and then Team Brownsville takes care of breakfast and dinner every day. Uh, we now pay, because we can no longer take food. We actually we pay a restaurant
oh, okay.
every day so that they can take food.
So now with COVID-19, now that we're in the trenches of the pandemic, you've paid a local restaurant to deliver
Yes, yes.
food
And
to.
we have a pastor that goes and takes every other day, takes firewood, so that people can cook for lunch. So we'll take over black beans and rice, and we'll have some non-perishables. We actually have 2 big trailers, like those pods when you're going to move.
Right.
You know what they're
Yeah.
like the backs of trailers. And so we have people in charge of those, and that's where we keep non-perishables, so that people can actually go and say. And then I'm not sure what day of the week it is anymore, but you go and you get groceries for free there. And then we have every other day fresh vegetables and fruits that are delivered to the camp.
So it sounds like Team Brownsville, now that
And
we're in the pandemic, you've really worked with the locals in Matamoros to help uh, facilitate the need,
well, we've had to. Yeah, we've
because you're
had
no
to.
longer allowed to physically cross yourselves or
And
the goods and services over.
And the Angry Tias and Abuelas also. I guess those are the 2 organizations that have given the most.
Mhm.
Not just personnel wise, but we have gotten a lot of donations and a lot of volunteers.
it's a multinational network now in terms of
Yes.
both sides of the river, the Rio Grande, helping out, especially
Yes.
with COVID-19 and the
We
pandemic.
had UNICEF there, but they lasted maybe not even 2 months.
Mm.
UNICEF came and was there for a little bit, and then we also have, I'm not sure if you've heard of the Yes We Can bus.
Okay, no, I haven't heard of it.
Anyway, it's a woman. Her name is Estefania Rebelion,
Mhm.
and she was an asylum seeker herself. She is now, I would say, in her late 20s. She buys school buses and she takes the insides out and she makes them into classrooms because she was an asylum seeker herself. And so now she has a Yes We Can bus in Juarez, and she has a Yes You Can bus over in, um,
Laredo or
what's the name of the one in El Paso and the one in San Diego?
Tijuana?
Tijuana, yes. And she has a bus ready for us. But that week that we were going to the spring break week, she had already come. She had interviewed teachers because she hires teachers from the community. Like, say, for example, here in Matamoros, she had already hired 3 or 4 teachers from Matamoros that are bilingual that would be teaching in the little school bus. And so the bus is converted into a classroom with desks and technology and then a playground, and it was just an amazing, and you look it up on the computer when we finish so you can see so she's ready. The bus is ready, but the fact that COVID came and now it's harder to get permission because the bus will be coming from the US into Mexico. You know what I'm saying? Right. So we're ready. As a matter of fact, we have the furniture, we have tables, we have chairs, we have brand new, and we have them in storage because the bus can't cross yet until INM gives the permission.
It's just another effort that's been
Yes,
postponed or paused because of COVID-19.
yes, yes.
Are you are the asylum seekers in Matamoros, do they have any PPE, protective personal equipment? Are they wearing masks?
We have
on the ground?
at this point, the parents that are teaching the children actually go on Mondays and go from tent to tent, kind of like home visits. So they'll take the homework for the week, and they'll take snacks and juices for the children. And then we have, before the pandemic, I would, after class, I would have top reader awards and I would have top writer awards. So that that has changed a bit. And so now the children have to give a synopsis of the book to prove, because the parents, they had to bring their reading list and the parents had to sign off on how many books they read and so on and so forth. So we have an abbreviated version of that. So the children are interviewed by the teachers one-on-one, but everybody has to have a mask if you're gonna get homework or you're gonna get, and we have had hundreds, if not thousands, of masks that have been made by people in the United States and sent to us for free for the children. I have a Girl Scout that is 11 years old. She just turned 11, and one of her Girl Scout projects was to do that. So I can send you pictures of that as well. But she's my niece, so my grandniece.
And
So it's been, we have learned a lot from the children. We have every now and then, because I have a teenager that's in charge of the library. She's a 17-year-old from El Salvador, and she'll text me in the middle of the night. She's like, "Is it okay that I borrow 4 notebooks, those little composition books, and 4 pencils. I'm like, of course, you don't need to ask me. But they know I send over. They know they are part of Facebook, and so they see, that people are sending and that I'm giving thanks to people for them. We started a little music class, so we got some of those recorders, like about 6 little flutes, so they're learning how to read music. I also have a young lady in a private school in Tennessee who's trying to get tablets, and she's teaching English to a couple of the children, of the teenagers and their parents. And so they're working on fundraisers. And everybody wants to come. Everybody wants to come and help. But I tell them, but right now you can't. We can barely cross. They send us back with things, and that's because we've crossed every day for 2 years. So the way people can help is by donating to our Facebook page. That's what I tell them.
Is the young lady in Tennessee, or then the recorders, is that being done through like Zoom or FaceTime?
Yes, they're doing FaceTime.
WhatsApp, different things like
Yes, exactly. But every day I'm in contact with the parents of the asylum seekers, or they'll send me pictures. Look, this is what we're doing. This is what and all with the hope that one day they're going to cross. And that everybody at the camp has somebody in the United States. They have a relative, a brother, a tia, a niece, somebody that says, I'll take them, and I'll take them to their court date. But this MPP has just stopped the whole production, and so many people have given up. And these people, continue their resilience, of keep on keeping on, and si vamos a pasar y esperamos en Dios, very faithful, very, we have some pastors that go and pray with the people and keep them hopeful that there's going to be a better day coming.
You can't be more resilient than having to put up with MPP, the long journey to get there, the hardships, the abuse, COVID-19 pandemic, and then hurricanes on top of it all. So the strength of those people.
We have a field hospital actually there at the camp. And so I think it was like, I forgot if it was 15 or 20 beds that we have. And we have a respirator there in case it's needed. We have people being tested. And before the hurricane, we had them in isolation and quarantine. And like they would have special food, like somebody would cook just for them. And that way they wouldn't come to the place where everybody would come and pick up their plate.
So as of now, Dr. Melba, has there been any outbreaks of COVID-19 in the camps?
Well, the thing is that if someone tests positive, well, first of all, let's say you come with your family today and it's your first time. You can't just go into the camp. You have to report to the INM, and then they put you in quarantine. And they, after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever they tell you, then they'll allow you into the camp or not. But there are people in separate tents that are in quarantine. But they're not forgotten. They have like somebody that's cooking for them, and we provide attention to them, medical attention as well. So also the clearance has to be by people, like let's say for instance the GRM that's there, because you know how the COVID, that you have antibody tests and then you have another kind of test, and well, it has to come from the Matamoros people that say, okay, he's fine or she's fine, she can go back to the camp. So and right now they're not allowing anybody new to the camp. Like if I wanted to go to the camp, I can't go in.
And that's a decision by the local authorities?
Yes.
And the asylum seekers, are they okay? They agree with that decision for their protection?
No, well, they don't have a say. But some of them are working, they have jobs. I mean, they're washing dishes at restaurants or washing cars or, you know, doing menial jobs that whatever they can find for survival.
In the community of the asylum seekers overall, are they very conscious about the dangers of the pandemic and COVID-19? Are they taking it seriously?
I'm not there. You know, I haven't been there since March. I can't say, but the pictures that I see, people are wearing masks and they're being, I don't know. I can't say.
But they're
We
wearing
hope they are. We hope they are. They can't say they don't have masks because they don't have any because we send plenty of items. Also, right now we have the mosquito outbreak. So, you know, we've sent and paid for a company in Matamoros to spray the camp. And we take the cutter and the off and the coils, and there's so many things. There's a group of us that meets once a week on Sundays, headed by Sister Norma Pimentel with Catholic Charities, and it's called the Dignity Village. And it's called the Dignity Village because they're the different NGOs, the different groups that are trying to help at the camp. And so she heads the committee, and we give reports. This is what's going on with the escuelita, and then the people GRM, this is how many people have been tested. And then, you know, a variety of groups, you know, the Angry Tias, what are they doing? We have a group, the Bay Area group is involved in that. They also come in, they send a lot of money and a lot of supplies. We have RCM, that's right there across from the camp. And they're the ones that do, like, when there's plumbing to do, or like, I don't know, 180 tons of gravel that they purchase, because once we found out about what happens when it rains, they started to have to, you know, we have an engineer there now that they have to channel the water so that it goes out to the river, and
that way the bank doesn't slide into the Rio.
And move the tents up higher, and we did have an evacuation plan, but it didn't work. It didn't work out because what happened is that there was a convent that was offered as a place for people to go for the storm, and then there was another church that was also offered. But what happened is the buses that came for the people on that Sunday, or whenever the river was supposed to break.
Yeah. After Hurricane Hannah, right?
They had, well, yes, a few days out. But the buses had the word Chiapas on the, you know how you have the heading, the headline there?
Right.
And they were marked, and people wouldn't get on. I'm like, no. They're like, no thanks. We'll wait it out here. And they did. Some of them, you know, left their tents, but they stayed in the plaza, and they just, you know, like one of the teachers, she's like, I just held my granddaughters through the night right here on a park bench. And that's it. And I brought the important papers in a plastic, the papers that I have to, that's all I could do. So, there's so many things that need fixing.
All to maintain the conditions of human dignity for the asylum seekers in this time. And like you bring up, spraying for mosquitoes and for venomous snakes and spiders, because in addition to COVID, there's also Zika and other malaria and other forms of mosquito-borne viruses that they have to contend with being outdoors.
The dengue also, yes.
Dengue.
And even like right now, as we've been talking, I have texts that they need 35 shower curtains because they're trying to make new showers for the people. You know, the people were taking a bath in the river. They were washing their clothes in the river. They were bathing the children, and then they were like, well, how come he has such a big rash? Well, excuse me, the river's full of, you know,
The maquilas
trash.
dump in the river all.
Exactamente.
Yeah. We have to have education about the environment that they're in
Yes,
so they can protect
yes,
their bodies
yes.
and their health. Yeah.
And we have, well, before the hurricane, we had 120 porta pots out there at the camp.
Mhm.
And of course, they took them off when the hurricane was coming because they were going to float away. And just this past Monday, they actually put the porta pots back.
Okay.
So now, and right now they're working on showers. So it's every day um, it's a new obstacle that we have to cross and we have to take care of. Last week it was mosquitoes. This week we're working on the showers and on how we're going to distribute tents, because a lot of people with the pictures of the flood and all that have donated tents. But
So
then we have to find out how are we going to give out tents. There's people that's in a 9-man tent, a 6-man tent, a 4-man tent.
the
All right.
logistics.
And who's going to be first and who's going to be second. And some people have a tent, but it's torn. It doesn't have a zipper and the mosquitoes get in. And some people are pregnant and they need. So right now,
Tremendous effort.
that was the Zoom that we had last night. So apparently there's some kind of I forgot what they call it, but if you think about like the barcodes, whenever we go buy something at the store, it's going to be something like that. And so people are actually at the camp, and most of them have cell phones. Will actually take a picture of their tent and how torn it is, and then, you know, okay, I have two, and then there will be verification that that is true, and then they'll get a new tent.
Your
So
team of problem solvers, always putting out fires that start up every day, every week.
yes. Yes.
So if like you said earlier, there's still a 2 months and the peak of hurricane season is yet to come, do you guys feel like you're maybe more prepared in case the Rio Grande Valley, South Texas is in the eye of or in the path of another tropical system?
We can be prepared. We can't. They don't have homes. I mean, think about the tents that we take. I mean, that's something where you go and spend a weekend somewhere at the beach or, you know, at a national park. They're not made to live a year there. It's just, you know, and sometimes people say, well, they have so much junk in their tent. I'm like, their junk, that's their house. You know, because sometimes they go and they check, well, what do you have in there? And, you know, a lot of people are accusing them. Well, what if, you know, they're drinking, or what if they're smoking, or what? Well, if you're caught drinking, you're actually expelled. Like, they throw your whole family out. So you know, they're not supposed to have drugs. They're not supposed to have alcohol in the premises, because it's really a village of families.
And those rules for no drugs, no alcohol, is that the government, Mexican government, or are those?
Yes.
Rules?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The INM, they're the ones in charge.
Okay. Okay. All right. So then the final question to close off Team Brownsville and your vast efforts at providing humanitarian efforts and dignity for the asylum-seeking men, women, and families. Melba, just is there anything that you would want to add or share that should be documented in our interview for the sake of future students, future scholars, just future people who will listen to what you've been saying today in order to better understand the asylum seekers and the families who live in the encampments along the southern edge of the Rio Grande?
Well, just that I believe that when we had the caravans coming, there was a lot of publicity and people knew about what was going on. And because of what's been happening in our government and politics and so on and so forth, I feel like they're forgotten. They haven't left. They're still there. and that we really have done all that is humanly possible to help the people, to help the families, to have some kind of hope. And when you see the child, you're going to see your daughter there, you're going to see your son there, you're going to see your grandson there. Their little faces, they're the same. They're the same. And they're people that have dreams, and they want to come to the land of opportunity and of freedom, and just like you would do for your kid. You know, a lot of people say, well, it's their fault. Why did they bring kids? And why do they? Well, you know, you're not there. But imagine, I mean, in the pandemic, all our worlds have changed, haven't they? I mean, we have had to. Well, these people are worse off than that. However uncomfortable we are, or we're in an uncharted land, they're worse. And why? Because of policies that shouldn't be there. We need to be humane. These people are citizens of our world. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter if they're educated or they're not educated. They're people, and they just want a chance. They just want a chance. Like many of our ancestors that came. Mm-hmm. They want a chance to come in. And, you know, I have a lady that tells me, look, as soon as I cross, I'll go and I'll take care of your mom, and you don't need to pay me. I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that, you know. But yes, I wish I had a magic carpet and I could go and get you and your whole family, and you know, things are, but we have to vote. We have to get out, and we have to see injustice, and we have to call it. Right. And then we can't pretend like, oh, well, I can't, you know, I can't do anything. Yeah, everybody can do something. So we just need to be aware that there's always service learning to do. There's always, and no matter even if you don't have money, that doesn't matter. Where there's a will, there's a way. My dad always used to say that. Yeah. And that we hope for better days, and that get connected. We're on Facebook, teambrownsville.org. We also have people who have who come show up. I mean, like if they see me somewhere, but before the pandemic, when I would go to normal stores, they would give me like $20. They're like, here, because I know that, you know, that these $20 you can help, you know, a family or whatever. So there's a lot of good, there's more good people in the world than bad. I believe that. And just that we choose love, and that's what guides our mission. Love of humanity. Mm-hmm. And we know people are suffering, and we do what we can to help. We continue our lives, and we continue to be daughters and sons and employees, and, you know, brothers and sisters, and we just do it. And somebody, you know, rings the doorbell, and all of a sudden I have 500 books, you know, in my garage. And then some people, you know, when I was there in McAllen, a woman came and she handed me $1,000. She just gave it to me in an envelope, in groups of in tens. And I'm like, who are you? She's like, I've been watching you. I've been watching you, and I've been watching the way you speak to these people. And I'm leaving town. I have a plane to catch, but I want you to give a $10 bill to each person that gets on the bus. And if you have 4 kids, you give them $40. And if they're 2 people, you give them $20, so they can eat from here to wherever they were going. At this point, they were in the United States.
This happened back in 2018, 2019. McAllen.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
No, but still, I mean, we have people writing $1,000 checks, and they're like, for the escuelita, for the children, for school supplies. for books, for sanitary napkins, for diapers, for wipies.
It's a real grassroots effort.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Dr. Melba, we just have a few questions left. I wanted to ask you, as we start to close the interview, if you could speak a bit about your life as an educator at Texas Southmost, because I know that you've been employed there for a while, and like many educators, you've had to be flexible and adapt to pandemic life in your career. So could you, as we start to close, could you share any stories about how COVID has impacted your work as an educator at Texas Southmost-College in Brownsville?
Well, I now know about Zoom, and as I always tell my students at the very beginning, I'm sure that all of you young people know much more about technology than I do, and I know that. And I'm telling you that up front. But I know much more about writing and about literature and about English. So if you help me, I'll help you. And together we'll make it through the semester. I also have, all my courses are service learning. So I actually give them, as a matter of fact, just this week, I already made my 100 ways that you can earn your 10 hours of service learning credit. And that's attached to their grade as well. So they write essays and they do reflections, they do a variety of things. And now with COVID, of course, I've had to change a lot of things. We used to go to old folk homes and play bingo. We used to do the Special Olympics with special needs children. They used to go with me to Matamoros and they used to teach with me at the escuelita. And some of them, got a little rapport there going, and a variety of things that have changed. And so we need to change with it. Starting my 41st year teaching, I also have to change, and I also have to learn from my students as well.
Could you share how you've adapted your service learning for the pandemic time?
Okay, okay. Next door neighbor needs to go grocery shopping. You can offer to babysit the kids while the mom goes to HEB or to Walmart or wherever they need to go, Target. You can bake for your next door neighbor. You can, find an elderly person that lives in your neighborhood and go and mow their lawn, go trim the trees. There's a variety of ways. Now that remote learning, go and help somebody who has a 5-year-old child, and go and help them there with the computer and because we're a community now of go plant, go make a garden for somebody.
There's ways that I guess that you can maintain social distancing while also servicing the community too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. So here's where we left off. Are you concerned about the effectiveness of remote/online learning as you start this next academic school year?
Yes, I'm very concerned because I'm an old school teacher, as in face-to-face is all that I've grown up with. That's all I had in my life, and this is moving the cheese for me to another place. So I don't think it's as effective. I know that research out there says otherwise, but I guess I have to live it to tell you. Ask me in a year and I'll tell you what I think. If I love it, I'll stay. If not, I'll retire.
Has Texas Southmost provided any like modules or trainings to help you migrate your face-to-face?
Right now, we started last year before the pandemic with the Quality Matters. So all the English teachers had to take a course within our regular schedule. So we were actually, the woman's first name is Sandra, and I have the book here somewhere about how to teach students to learn. Sandra Yancey McGuire. So we actually had workshops with her So we actually took a course, which I thought was a bit much, but now that I'm finished, I'm glad. But it had to do with incorporating technology and critical thinking and asking smart questions and how to embed all that. And all of a sudden, about 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call that said, oh, by the way, we're going to nominate you to write an online Quality Matters course. I'm like,
Oh, wow. So that's actually
yeah. So I guess that means that I didn't do so badly in the course, because I'm going to be working on a Mexican American literature.
Mm-hmm.
It's a course that I already teach, so I'm supposed to tweak my my assignments so that they can be online, and so they can be have critical thinking assignments and readings and all that, creative, evaluating, analyzing, and so that's going to be in addition to my regular 5-class load. Yes.
Which that actually addresses my next question that I have here is, have you taken on or have you been assigned any extra work duties because of COVID-19?
Plus, each of us is going to get between 10 and 12 teachers to mentor on the side, because we have such a large dual enrollment.
Right. Mm-hmm. Where you're educating the high school kids getting college credit.
Right, because we don't just have the Brownsville school. We have, I think, all the way to Raymondville right now with the dual enrollment. So I know you all, UTRGV has dual enrollment as well, but we have more dual enrollment students last fall than we had regular walk on campus.
Oh, wow.
So we're almost at 10,000 right now. Well, that was the count last fall. Of course, they're saying now the enrollment is down, but right now we have full classes, and they're going to take registration all the way up to the first day of class. And usually by now they would have cut off registration, but if you need the numbers, you got to change. You got to change.
So how many courses are you teaching? Are you teaching 4, 5, 6, 5 courses?
But they offer you the option. If you want an overload, then that's 6. But like I told my department chair, to me, an overload is making that new course, because yes, I've taught it, but it's going to be very different. And I'm going to have to go search for resources and, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So next question, what kinds of policies has Southmost enacted in response to COVID-19?
Well, we're going to be having our first official meeting on Monday, but we've been getting emails regarding attendance. We're not supposed to drop anybody this semester. I don't know how that's going to go, but I don't know if they can drop themselves or because attendance, about a month ago, they asked each of us in an email, we had to respond like within 48 hours. Are you going to teach synchronous or asynchronous? And that way, as the students are registering, they're going to know, okay, well, it's synchronous. So I know that I need to, 8 o'clock is when the teacher's going to do the lesson, and she's not going to record it. So at 8 o'clock, if that's what you signed up for, that's where you need to be. But there are other teachers that have chosen asynchronous, and to me, I think asynchronous is harder to keep track of everything, because if it's a lot of work in the summer to get all the lessons and all the lectures, but how long are you going to give them for essays and the time, to get it back and to rewrite, and I don't know. It's just for me, I pick synchronous. Yes.
So have you, or you personally as the instructor of synchronous classes, and also maybe Southmost, are there any policies for if your students or a close family member comes down with COVID and they have to be absent, depending on
I'm sure that's going to be the first thing we're going to talk about. I just had somebody while I was picking up my car, I just had a pal there at school that texted me. She's like, I just want to tell you that I resigned today. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I don't have anybody to take care of my mom.
And she resigned.
And she's
BISD
yeah,
or
no, Texas Southmost-College.
Oh, so you're down an instructor.
Because she teaches the early childhood courses, but she can't find anybody. And her son had committed to taking care of his grandma, and he found a job in Pennsylvania, and he's taking off. So, but I told her I would call her later because I know that she's going to want to talk for a while. And we're all in different situations. And if that's what she thought was the best thing for her mom, then
making
so be it.
Yeah. Okay. And so then the last question I have here, do you know of any Texas Southmost employee or support staff member who has had to receive a pay cut or lost work or has been furloughed?
Well, I haven't been in touch with anybody since May, April or May, as in for the summer. Generally, I don't sign up to work in the summer because usually I spent a lot of time in Oaxaca. I go to Mexico, or I make myself free to just travel. Obviously, that didn't happen this summer, but still, all the online and Zoom and whatever, it made me, by the time May came around and the grades were in, I was ready to just say, you know what? And they're like, well, we're going to be paying more, I don't know, $400 or $500 more per class. And I'm like, well, you know what? My mental state is more important than my bank account right now. So, but there were a lot of people that made a lot of money, and they were, and that's everybody's. I just needed a time, and I'm glad that I took it because I don't know what kind of condition I'd be in. For sure, I wouldn't have been able to help so much at the escuelita because that takes a lot of time and a lot of mental, stamina to kind of keep.
So I guess as a quick follow-up question,
Yes.
Did Texas Southmost-College, are they letting instructors call the shots if they want to return to the classroom if the judges allow it?
No.
Your semester
Everything 100% online.
Okay. Spring might be.
I think they did mention something about, for example, there's classes where you have to do some kind of I don't know if it's mechanics or welding or maybe like some of the early childhood classes where teachers have to go in and do observations, and the students have to kind of like student teaching and things like that. There and also with people that are studying with like the police academy and the nursing and things that have to do with, you need to be there at the hospital or you need to be there at the police station. So there are some exceptions, but generally, no, we're 100%. And we don't know about what's going to happen in January. Everything is, let's wait and see what happens.
Okay. Okay. All right. And so now we're going to move to the final set of questions here. And so these questions, they're asking you to reflect and share your opinions, your stories, just about the way that local, state, and federal responses have been. So the first question, Are you satisfied with the local responses to COVID-19 in Brownsville, Rancho Viejo, and Cameron County?
Am I satisfied?
Mm-hmm.
Well, uh, we've had some deaths here in Rancho Viejo, young people in like their 20s. So that was early on in March that we found that out. So apparently these students had been on a trip during spring break or sometime in March. And so they actually contacted it in abroad.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we've had quarantine places. We've had you can't leave your house after 10 o'clock unless you're an essential worker. So we've had kind of curfews here and in Cameron County. Apparently they have closed the beaches for months, but people are still going to the beach and getting sick. So I don't know what's going on over there. So I think early on, I think Texas opened too soon, and people were going to bars, and everybody was pretending like, oh, well, I'm not 80 years old, so I don't need to worry about it. But I think the fact that we have made national and international news on how many people are getting sick in Cameron County, and we're just, 15, how can you have 15,000 people, getting sick, and people that we know dying that were healthy otherwise. So I guess I don't know how more people need to wear masks, people need to obey the rules. I really believe that schools, that elementary, middle school, and high schools shouldn't open in the whole year. I mean, remote 100%. And there are districts that are giving their laptops and tablets, and I just think that it's not going to be the same. But is it better to have your child behind in school for a year, or your child, or you to be planning a funeral?
Yeah.
Like it's come to that point.
Right.
That, I mean, college is different, but we still have some students that struggle. I had some students that had a hard time finishing the semester. They would tell me, ma'am, I go to McDonald's because I don't have internet. And they would park outside of the McDonald's, but then the McDonald's started putting those traffic barriers so people couldn't do that. And they were just like, you had to be in the drive-through, and that's where the students got free internet. And then I had students in Mexico that were having a hard time because they were not letting them cross. Some of them have dual citizenship, but most of them don't. And so there's just so many factors when we, in our community right now that people aren't paying attention to, or you're forced to pay attention once you
Are impacted by it.
it changes your whole, I think about people that live by themselves and that don't have kids and don't have people to watch them and make sure that they're, getting. I have noticed that there's a lot. My husband and I have been feeding the homeless for about 35 years. And just today we went over, once a month we feed over at this place called Good Neighbor Settlement House, and it's like a soup kitchen. Of course, over there everything has changed also because we're no longer allowed to serve. We just take the food by 12 o'clock the day that we're assigned. And we take the food, and the employees from the Good Neighbor Settlement House actually, they pack things in bags and they hand them over. They have a little tent outside, and they'll give the homeless people, okay, here's a little bag, this is your lunch. Here's another little bag, this is your dinner. So everything, even the homeless have had to change their how they eat, how they survive. And so I think that the county has done what they could, and the county judge gets on every day, and he gets upset sometimes, and he's like, people aren't listening. And he says, this is how many people died since yesterday. And remember when they had, I don't remember, I don't know, it was Mother's Day or Father's Day or 4th of July, but after gatherings, people were getting sick. People even going to funerals were getting sick and dying. So
There's been a lot of those in the valley right now.
Like somebody said on the news, it's just that in the Rio Grande Valley, they come from a pachanga culture, and they don't know what it's like to invite one person. And it's the truth. We always find, even in death, we find ways to gather people, and that's just the familia mentality. And then they bring el vecino y la comadre and the kids, and and then all of a sudden you have multi-generations, and people are not wearing masks, and people are hugging and kissing and what we always do, but we learn the hard way right now.
Okay.
It's not how it used to be.
Okay, then this next question, what are your thoughts on the national response to COVID-19 led by President Trump and his administration?
Well, I just think that they didn't do enough at the beginning, and that's why we're in the state we're in. I was very impressed by the governor in New York and how he took the bull by the horns, because they were really in bad shape. But you have to get to the point that it has to be like a tourniquet. You have to just say, okay, this is it. Okay, nobody's going to be driving. If you're driving, we're going to put you in jail. Or, you know what I'm saying? You have to get you have to take drastic measures to make people see. And how they were showing those trailers. We now have those trailers here that where they have to get trailers where they have refrigerated meat to put the bodies, because we don't have enough. They're posting all over Facebook, different people. Oh, well, my sister died last week, and the earliest they can take her in is Labor Day weekend to cremate her. That's just to cremate her. So where had we ever, and I asked my mom, do you remember your mom ever talking about yes, well, she said, yes, there was a Spanish flu, but people would board up their houses completely. It was like you didn't even know it was day or night, and people didn't go out. But I think that we have a culture, we have a society that thinks that we're invincible. Yeah. And that nothing terrible is going to happen to us. That happens to other people, but not to us. And I guess that is to our detriment, that we have that belief that we're invincible and that nothing's going to happen to us.
That story that you said about your 85-year-old mother recalling about what her mother remembered from the 1918 yes. pandemic, when she said that people were boarding up the houses. Yes. Where was that?
Well, my mother grew up in Kingsville, so it's not far from here.
So still South Texas, but up in Kingsville. She yes. remembers people boarding yes. up their houses during the Spanish flu times.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. We were just talking about that last night. But also, I believe that people they lived simpler lives. More people lived like in ranches, and like they had their chickens, and they had food. They had vegetable gardens. They went to bed when it was dark. It wasn't like us. Now we have electricity. We have air conditioning. We have Netflix. We're just very spoiled uh, because was it's just we have had to change so many. We have to change the way we think and the way we work and um, and see how you're going to make it better. How are you going to make it better? We can't just sit and cry about it either. We got to move and change and learn from others that have been through hard times.
Okay, so this is the second to last question.
Okay.
Will, since this is a special year in our national democracy, because it's a voting year for the presidential voting year,
Yes.
are you going to consider the national response to COVID-19 when you cast your vote for whoever you vote for? Is that going to be on your mind if you vote? Because of course there's the are you going to go vote at a public polling place, right? Or are you going to do mail-in ballot, or are you going to refrain from voting because of maybe a fear?
Well, we usually early vote.
Okay.
I usually do that. That way, that day, whether they make it a national holiday or not. And I also encourage my students to vote. And I always tell them, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but you do need to vote. You need to be aware of and now I think the pandemic has made people wake up like, ¿Qué está pasando?
Mhm.
And what about this? And what about that? And how can I make a difference? And
So you'll go with your mask and gloves because we have to do the touch screen now.
well, we did that. We did some voting in, I think it was, well, it was supposed to be in May, but they moved it to July. So there's actually at the library here, you can drive up and they bring everything to you, to your car. I mean, I didn't choose to do that. And you don't need to tell them why. You don't need to say who's sick or not sick. But we went in and we had gloves, we had masks, and we had a computer that had all the plastic on it, and it was easy, and nobody touched anybody, and people were far away, and they would only let certain people, and I couldn't even be like next to my husband. I had to be somewhere else.
So that's the same process you're hoping for when you
yes.
vote for the president.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be even hopefully they'll let us do mail-ins, but right now the president doesn't think that's a good idea. but we'll see. He wants to change the election too. So
Okay.
so
All right,
crazy.
Melba. That's it. And this is the final question of the wonderful interview that we've had together. And it's just an open question. Is there anything else that you wish to share with me about your experiences in this COVID-19 era that I haven't asked about? Any final remarks or that you wish to make?
I think that you pretty much covered everything. Just that we have a new frame of mind, a paradigm shift per se, where if we didn't used to believe that this could happen in such a highly technological society, and so we've come so far, but look at us now, just one little ranch like that, and we're like, oh, everybody's like, oh, well, what about this, and oh, what about that, but I think it's made death a little bit closer. It doesn't matter how old you are, but people are starting to think about their mortality and the mortality of those around them, and of people, that acquaintances, neighbors, and just that we need to pay attention.
Right.
And God's trying to get our attention. So yeah, I think he has my attention now. So if you're not a believer, that's fine. But this pandemic has made you, has made us as a whole, hopefully, become a little more human and a little more obedient to that we have to be careful and take care of our environment and take care of the folks that matter most, which are, our the older folks that are left and the younger ones. And then we need to also take care of ourselves. So we got to focus and keep our, keep our head up and learn from the mistakes that we've made as a community, as a nation, and as a world. And how can we go on? And I had my students keep COVID journal. So I tell them one day, when you're a grandma, the 18, 19-year-olds, one day you're going to have children and then grandchildren, and they're going to ask you, what about this? They're like, no, ma'am, they're not. Yeah, I know you think you're going to be 18 all your life. Because when I was 18, that's what I thought too. But it goes on, you blink and you're 62.
All right, Dr. Melba, thank you so much. And now you've left a beautiful video archive for your children and your children's children's children to see on the digital archives at UTRGV and at Voces UT Austin as well. So thank you so much for your participation, your stories, and sharing your experiences about what it means to be Mexican American in South Texas, living in and during the historic COVID-19 pandemic times. So thank you so much, Dr. Melba.
Thank you so much.
Mucho gusto.
Besitos.
Okay, take
All
care.
right, thank you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.